This episode begins with both the pirates and Mega Team trying to bond, but their conflicting personalities, it's making it kind of hard. Donnie makes friends with just about all the Mega Team, and Marvelous and Troy are kind of there, but it's not really working for everyone else, so they decide to, Marvelous decides to express his history, his backstory, whatever you want to call it, to the Mega Team to open up more to them, as well as the rest of his crew, and explain who Burden is. Marvelous's father is Rufus Barbarossa, and Captain Marvelous's real name is Martin Barbarossa. They were humans on Terra Venture. During the occupation by the Zongyak, Rufus was a scientist, and he was put in charge in studying the quasar sabers. And it's like, that scene in Thor where there's tents around Mjolnir, like that with the quasar sabers. So, Rufus is studying them, and then one day he gets the idea that he and his son and his son's best friend could wield the quasar sabers, so he sneaks them in late night to try and steal them, which, of course, is where Martin gets the whole, "Come on, Burden, if any one of us could wield a quasar saber, it would be you," from the previous episode. But as they're trying to pull the swords, a bunch of prototype X-Borgs, as Martin says, and the audience can clearly see their cogs, because remember, the Zongyak took on some of the remnants of the Machine Empire. So this explains that X-Borgs, and by extension Bruisers, are upgraded cogs. Rufus was managed to fend them off as the kids and him escaped. They commandeered a then modern Zongyak cruiser. They painted it red and embroidered their own logo on it, and became known as the Red Corsairs, because they would all wear red. And they do the whole Robin Hood thing of stealing from the Zongyak and giving to the poor and needy and all that. And this would have all been a decade, almost 2 decades ago. Martin and Burden built Navi out of scrap parts they found, and it was Burden's idea of the nickname Navi, which was short for what Rufus called it, the navigation and fortune-telling mechanical avian. And the two kids would give each other nicknames. Burden called Martin Marvelous as a play on Martin, and a sort of dig at the Zongyak Emperor Mavro. And Marvelous would call Burden Joker because he was such a jokey guy. Around this time, they also found out rumors about the greatest treasure in the universe. All was fine until one day Burden betrayed the Red Corsairs to the Zongyak because he wanted a pardon for his piracy, and Damaris gave him it if he agreed to betray his family. So X-Borgs ambushed the Red Galleon, led by Burden, and Rufus decided to sacrifice himself to draw out the X-Borgs. Gave his red captain coat to Martin and said, "You're the captain now, Marvelous. Find the greatest treasure in the universe. Get a new crew. Stop the Zongyak." Martin didn't want his father to leave, but Rufus jumped out of the Red Galleon and forced him to leave or die with him. So Martin finally just accepted this and escaped with Navi on the Red Galleon. He made his way back to Miranoi to try and look for a new crew during the punishment of Miranoi, where he met the rest of the crew, and the rest is history. "Oh no, giant bruisers are attacking, we gotta stop them." The Mega Team tries summoning the Ultra Gosei Great Megazord, but when they try growing Dadis large, it doesn't work. And then, of course, we remember the real Dadis is on the flagship, and it starts growing until it accidentally hits a button, and it turns out he's in a cargo area or something, and Dadis literally falls out the back of the ship as he's growing large. And it's shaking the ship, and Vakar is like, "Ah, what the crap is that?" And Damaris is like, "Oh, Dadis escaped." And Snoodus is like, "No matter, we already have all the information we needed from him." So the real Dadis plummets to Earth and crushes the bruisers that were invading. And then the fake Dadis turns into his true evil form. And then he's taken out by Noah in Ultra Mode and Donnie, who goes MegaForce Blue Ultra Mode. And then Hyper Dadis takes out the fake Dadis along with the Gosei Great Grand Megazord. Vakar is ringing his bell to get his T-Slave. And his T-Slave walks in, but Rivera shoulder checks him. And she's like, "Buzz off, loser." And the food slave, Invidious, is like, "Oh my god, Senpai noticed me." But then we cut to a bank in Angel Grove, which then is held up by some comical bank robbers who are armed with the blasters the X-Borgs use. But then we see a bathroom door open, and someone very familiar walks out when sees the bank robbers and runs back in. And one of the bank robbers sees this, and he's like, "Hey, get out here." And then we see the full body shot, and it's Justin, all grown up. The Blue Turbo Ranger. He morphs, and then he kicks down the bathroom door, which one of the burglars was standing behind, and he goes flying with the door on him. And then he starts fighting the other two burglars. Invidious then decides to put a love potion in one of his teas. He gives the normal tea to Vakar, and he gives the love potion to Lavira, hoping that the love potion, which will make her fall head over heels in love with the first person she lays eyes on, will be Invidious. And he's going to use this to both get his childhood crush, Lavira, and use her to free himself. Lavira, at the same time, is using the main computer to look through the morphing grid, and she sees the whole bank robbery getting saved by Justin. And so the love potion makes her fall in love with Justin instead. And then Invidious the cuck is like, "Okay, plan B, I will give you Justin if you let me go free." Well, at least I might get one of the two things I wanted. And then we see the pirates fighting some X-Borgs, and they decide to turn Go Ranger! Taking a cue from the 2017 movie, the Go Rangers are Zordon's original ranger group, with him being the red, and a pre-evil Rita being his Green Ranger, as they fought to save the M51 Galaxy from Lord Zed and Dark Spectre's Alliance of Evil.
Before there was time, before there was anything, there was nothing. And before there was nothing, there were monsters. Here's your gold star.
Dark Spectre then turned Rita and her family evil and conquered the M51 Galaxy, and then murdered the rest of her team except Zordon, who escaped to the Milky Way, and that leads into Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. So then the pirates use Go Ranger Hurricane, which is a football they kick around, and then it transforms into a garbage truck that sucks up the X-Borgs and drives away. They go back to pirate mode just as they're seeing Justin getting chased by a bunch of X-Borgs. So they hop in and there's some fighting, and then they go from the very first Sentai of Go Ranger to the very first Power Rangers with Mighty Morphin. And then later we do the same joke as they did in the Sentai of them going Power Rangers Turbo, but they screw up and do a different mode, and Justin's like, "That's not Turbo!" And Donnie's like, "Guys, what have I been telling you?" And memorizing the Ranger keys. And Joe's like, "Hey, you turn into wrong mode too." And Marvelous is like, "Whatever, let's do the right one." And of course, the wrong mode is the Sentai Turbo Ranger, which always gets confused with Power Rangers Turbo. So, continuing with that, let's have this be Power Rangers Cars, which is totally not confusing with Super Sentai Car Rangers. And they're from another dimension. So they turn the Turbo, and then they fight and defeat Invidious. And when they finish him the first time, the love potion wore off, and Lavira dumped Justin and just kind of went back to the flagship. And then it turns out Invidious survived the second attack, and now he's kind of just living in garbage. The pirates find him and see how pathetic he's living, so decide, hey, if you behave yourself, you can live here and you will be under our protection. And Invidious is like, really? And so he opens up a food stand, and he's like, I'm so glad to be the very first alien openly living on Earth. And then Piggy from SPD shows up, and he's like, yeah, well, make that second. And then steals food from his cart. Because if you remember, Piggy should still be on Earth since Mystic Force. And then also have a subplot throughout the episode of Jake and Gia. Jake is trying to muster up the confidence to ask her to the Valentine's Day prom dance or whatever. And then at the end of the episode, he finally does it, and Gia's like, yeah, sure. Which, finally lets them be in a relationship after 2 free seasons of Will They, Won't They. Navi gives a prediction, find a man in silver. So the pirates run around town looking for someone in silver, and then they find a monster with a collar and fight. And then they decide to go legendary and use their 6 Ranger keys. Geez, I wonder why. And go in Space Silver, Mighty Morphin Green, Quantum Ranger, Dino Thunder White, and Solaris Knight. And they try fighting the monster, but he has a force field. And Donnie tries rushing him, but he bounces off, but he drops his Dragon Dagger and finds a weak spot in the force field, which they don't notice as the monster runs away. But there's a mysterious figure wearing X-Borg armor who saw it. And then later, rematch, but right before they attack, the mysterious guy in the X-Borg armor runs up in front of them. He's like, let me take this, Rangers. And he pulls out a silver key, what? And a big morpher. And he's like, Pirate Ranger, set sail. And becomes the new Silver Ranger. And the whole pirates are just kind of dumbstruck at his existence as the Silver Ranger beats up all the X-Borgs and forces off the collar of the monster, which then blows up. And Vaccara's like, no, the bomb went off too late. And Damaris is like, excuse me, you put a bomb on him? What the fuck? And the mysterious Silver Ranger hits the monster with a final wave. And then afterwards, the pirates are like, okay, explain. And then the mysterious Silver Ranger takes his helmet off, and he's like, my name's Orion. I'm the last of my kind. And Orion explains that he was a miner 2 years ago, and then the Zanyak invaded his world. and he presumes that because his planet rebelled, the Zangak came down with force and leveled the planet. His parents and loved ones were killed in this. The pirates take Orion back to the command center. They meet the Mega Team, and Orion meets Datus, who turns out he knows Andrasian. And Gosei explains, of course he knows Andrasian. That's where I was originally based. Gosei explains hundreds of years ago, back before any of them were born, back before even Prince Vakar was born, that he was based on Andrasia with Tensu. Remember, Datus was Tensu. Gosei was tasked by Zordon to find a new world that needed Rangers, so he did, and he created Power Rangers Trump Card, which of course used the suits from Jekka, and with a female big one. The Zangyak invaded, which the Rangers could held off for a while, but thanks to their lack of Zords, they couldn't, do much when the Zangyak used Zombats. And, of course, they had, hordes of ships, so yeah, they were kind of screwed. So the planet fell to the Zangyak, and Gosei forced to relocate back to Earth because he refused to let the keys fall into the hands of the Zangyak. And then Donnie scratches his head and whistles, because remember, Burden has some keys. Orion explains how he found the Morpher by mining until he struck something that electrocuted him with green lightning. And Donnie interrupts oh, that's just like that one time when we were stealing the Ranger keys for the first time, and where Gosei in his head form usually sits. I looked in there and there was this big door and I touched it, and then I got zapped by green lightning too, and that's how I know all these Ranger stuff, man. And Lindsay's can we please stop touching things that will electrocute us and give us nerdy Ranger knowledge? Orion finds a Morpher hidden in crystal, and Gosei explains that was basically the prototype to the legendary Morphers. And Orion kept it as he got visions of past 6 and special Rangers. And then Orion morphed for the first time with it back on Andrasia, but it was too little too late, so he couldn't really do anything with it. And then Orion kind of lived native, on the beach shore for a while, trying to avoid, big pockets of radiation from Zangak bombing. He was there for months, and during that time, Orion used it to memorize all the 6 Rangers and Special Rangers, and as much as his visions could tell him. And he vowed that if he ever got off the planet, he will make it so the Zangak won't ever do this to another planet. And then luckily for Orion, some Zangak losers flew in to make some planet studies to see if anyone was still there, and Orion used a slingshot to take one of the ships down, and it worked because Zangak ships are super cheap and crappy, but because they're so cheap and crappy, they can have 10 zillion of them. So they're TIE fighters. So then Orion killed all the X-Borgs on board, and that explains his X-Borg armor. And he used spare parts from that and whatever spare parts he could find around the planet to repair the ship. And flew it till it basically ran out of gas, and he found a spaceport where he refilled and got cut up to date on what's going on in the wider galaxy, where he learned about Earth is getting invaded by the Zangyak. So Orion quickly made his way to Earth, but the tank of gas basically ran out as soon as he got there, so his ship crash landed. And he arrived just about yesterday. And everyone's like, oh, so sorry about your family and stuff. And a lot of sad moments. Then Orion breaks the ice and says, hey, can someone please cut my hair? It's been like a month since I last cut it.